Other than that, we are going to move on to the next section. So we can just, Mary's going to be running the slideshow for me, but I'm kind of change hats a bit here and just talk a little bit more about this next section, which is going to talk about sharing and doing some other things. So if you can move that forward, Mary. So while she's doing that, thanks again for joining us for the Primary Sources and Teaching Online webinar series. And again, this is going to be the part 2 of the Curating Primary Sources for Online Learning. So as Mary mentioned earlier, that the really important thing about what she's done, which was collecting and curating materials, is that now we need to really think about how this helps our peers. And as it says here, caring and sharing, and it may not really seem like it, but people on the network really do, it may not seem like they're contributing much, but they are reading and relying on what you share. In our looking at the analytics of the network, we really noticed that the vast majority of the work or the interactions that are occurring on the network are people who are reading and not so much contributing or commenting on things. And so people really do rely on that. Just as a reminder, that's kind of the vast majority, not only on the network, but also in social media in general. So taking some time to curate your materials, ideally on the TPS Teachers Network, but anywhere is helpful, and getting those words out to help your peers and your teachers is kind of a really important things to do. So we can move on. And Mary did talk a little bit about it, but this just kind of, I like to think of it as levels of sharing on the TPS Teachers Network. So really a good start is really just to create an album and just curate your thinking as you're collecting primary sources from the Library of Congress or other places. And just putting those on the network is a great way because by default, those are shared with everybody who's in the network, and they can just have the advantage of your time that you've spent collecting information. The next step, which we talked about, which is better, is just to add some of those teaching notes. That's really the gold that you're providing as a teaching expert, as a teacher. All those years of college and your years of experience as a teacher, those little teaching notes, no matter how small they are really an insight into all your experience as a teacher. So just adding something there is very important to our community as a TPS Teachers Network and as your peers. Just having a little insight on what you might use those sources for is really important. Next here is this what I say best, but mostly just to fill in the metaphor of good, better, best. But really just another better way of doing it is to share your materials outside of the network. And we've built in a few tools into the network. Mary mentioned these, but there's one is that you can download an album, which just gives you kind of an offline copy of those albums that you create. So one, you can just straight export a PDF, as you can see on the screen there. And the other, which is really handy, is to do that advanced download, which gives you a bunch of tools that allows you to pick out which specific resources in that album that you'd like to share out as a PDF. And so you can go in there and you can rearrange things. So these are really handy. For instance, if you're doing a PD event or sharing with your students, and maybe you've curated 50 things, but you only need 3 things for a DBQ or something of that nature. So you can rearrange those in the order that you want, take out the ones you don't need, and then and just kick those out as a PDF document. Really, the next step that we're going to be talking about here, or I should mention the last thing here, is that there's also a public link. So if you don't want to download the item, there's a public link here that allows you to just either grab that URL at the bottom of any album page, or there's also Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and I think you can email too if you're going from the shareable link. So any of those things are just available to you to share directly from the network. And so we built those tools in. So we go to the next slide. Really, we're getting to kind of going to the next level. So this is beyond sharing your albums and your curated materials beyond the TPS Teachers Network. And really this is taking what Mary did in that first section, which was searching, curating, and doing all that thinking, writing those amazing teachers notes, and then applying those to other areas that are not the Teachers Network, because obviously that's the TPS Teachers Network is great, but you may need to incorporate this into other areas, into other tools that you might be using, especially in this time where we're doing a lot of online learning. There's probably some interfaces you may want to take that curation and apply it to. We could spend lots of time, and we have spent lots of time already in our past webinars talking about this, with some of the things like the Pear Deck, Screencastify, Padlet, Flipgrid. We've walked through those in previous webinars. There's a link down at the bottom, and we'll share links with that as we go along. But really, this is just letting you know that there's lots of ways that you can take this curated material that you've collected on the TPS Teachers Network and then take it to another level. So the next slide is really talking about a tool that we have talked about before a little bit, which is Adobe Spark, but I'm actually going to hand this over to Kile Clabaugh, who has been doing a lot of work taking Spark, or taking albums from the network and then taking it to that next level, like Mary showed you in the first part. But Kyle's actually going to share some of his experiences of using Spark, kind of taking those albums to the next level. So I'm going to hand it off to Kyle so he can share his knowledge of all the amazing things Adobe Spark can do with your curated materials. So over to you, Kyle.
Thanks, Keith. So I just wanted to address some of the things that I've been talking with teachers with, and also just kind of show you how easy and simple this is. So here is the Spark page. It's spark.adobe.com. And we do, through our institution, have a full account. But if you just click the sign in, you can get a free account that includes just about everything you need to do any of these type of activities as you want. And all the Spark pages that I created are through my school account. But you can do those Spark pages in the same way through your through a free account with Google. So I'll just sign in with my Google account here. And the first thing you'll see is this up here that just notices that you can upgrade for free. They're offering a 2-month subscription right now for or a trial for the pro version right now, but like I said, the free version, you can do just about anything you want with it. The easiest way to do it is to create a project. And I like that they have all of these different kind of ways, templates, I guess you could call them, to create it. So they have a flower or a flyer, an Instagram post, Facebook cover. The Spark albums that we've been creating through the TPS Teachers Network albums were web pages, but you can also do videos and collages and things like that. So really you got to kind of think of, if you're going to create a Spark album with your network album, or a Spark page with your network album, you really got to think kind of backwards design. What do you want your audience to take away from your creation? And what order do you want it to be in? What primary sources? And that's why the album tool is so amazing, because it curates all of the sources for you. So you can put everything in there, you've got your album, and then what you can do is just grab that shareable URL, open it up, and all these images that get put in, they will get put in by default as the highest definition that the Library of Congress has. So that's why you can see them pretty well here. Some of them don't go bigger, but some of them do. The nice part about it is, if you just right click and click Save Image As on all of these images, you can create a folder. So what I did is just create a folder for all my social distancing ones. And then once you have all of your images downloaded, then it's just really a upload and copy and paste exercise. And I wanted to show you some examples of what Spark can do. So here's one. This is from the flyer template, and the flyer template's nice because you can go any size you want, from landscape to portrait, just about any size you want. This free version, you'll notice that the Adobe Spark watermark is there, and that only goes away with the pro version, but that's not very intrusive. I haven't found any problems with that. Here is a Instagram post, so you can kind of see how it's laid out a little bit different, but it's kind of like a meme creator. It's a good way, if you don't, especially if you don't have like those Photoshop skills or those Photoshop that Adobe suite from your school. This is a great kind of dumbed down, easy version of Photoshop to make all these kind of things just, you know, pop out and look prettier and more engaging for your students. So here's one of the collages. And I love that you can just kind of put a bunch of different primary sources in there. It makes it really easy to resize and put the focus on different parts and put some text in there. So here I just want to show you real quick. This is the album that I created with the free account from the Mary's Social Distancing album. And you'll see how it looks a little bit different. Here's the one from my pro account. So the thing that you don't get with the free account is the ability to brand your pages and posts with your own colors and logos and things like that. But however, you do get these themes, which these themes work perfect, and especially for students just kind of on the go, it makes it really, really easy to set up something that looks nice and easy to put things in. So what I'm gonna do is, I've already got this image that Mary added to the album. So what I'm gonna do is, let's put it down in the, oops, wrong one. If I scroll all the way down, you'll see the plus marks all over. This is kind of where, and it looks really weird when you're designing, because this is where you can add a photo or the text or a button for like a link or a video in there as well. And the videos are really nice. You saw that in the one of the other albums that Mary showed, where you can put a primary source on one side and then like a video or an audio clip on the other side. So let's go down. I'll show you the scrolling storyboard is the GlideShow, excuse me. So if I wanted to add a GlideShow, I could do it all at once, but what I'm gonna do is just edit it. So if I click on that edit photos, you'll see all the GlideShow ones that I put in for this bottom part. So I'll just upload a photo, grab the Red Cross one, click save, and then you'll have this photo like right at the bottom of it. So we got this text box right here that I can move around if I want, depending on where the focal point of the image is. And then let's grab that description from Mary in the teaching notes and just copy and paste it right in here. And it's really that simple. I always like to put a little disclaimer in here just so people know that you can change the questions if you want. These are kind of suggestions that we liked. The other one that is pretty cool that I've seen students do, and I want to show you this video. My computer was not cooperating when I was trying to make my own with the social distancing album. So I wanted to show this really quick video of what a student did.
This video is called Sea Turtles. Sea turtles lay on average about 110 eggs at a time. When the babies grow up, they go to the same beach that they were born. Then they lay their own egg. There are 7 different species of sea turtles.
So you can see it's really cool, and each one of these parts
Green.
that the student put in there was a picture, just plopped it right in there, put some text in there, and then you can add that audio on top and make a really engaging and interactive kind of research project, no matter the age. A little scaffolding might be needed for the younger kids to work the technology, but it's a really simple, easy way to make a really cool research project. So the other thing I'll show you real quick is just so you have an idea of how it looks like when you push it out. The present button is kind of like the preview. So if you would just kind of want to look at it, see how it looks, we'll see if my computer cooperates. Yeah, so this is how it'll look. And you can kind of go through the whole thing. And I really like the way it just zooms in on the pictures. So those students can do that primary source analysis just right there on the screen. So the share button, when you want to publish it, you just click the share, publish, and share link. And this one was already created, so you'll see we noticed you made some changes, and if you want to update it. So I did add that, so I'll just update this link. And that link that comes out will be accessible to anybody. And it'll, as far as I know, in perpetuity, it'll be on there as long as you don't delete it from your account, or delete your account, or Adobe delete your account or something like that. They'll be keeping these links up there. So this is a great way for your students to use it in the classroom, but also you to use it as a teacher, especially in this remote learning setting. So really, I kind of want to ask some questions. You know, if we've got a flyer and a collage, I've already got, let's see, Michelle was saying that she uses collages to share as writing thought starters. Oh, that's awesome. Student teams are in charge of creating one, and the classes work off of them. Created by the students for our study topics. I love that idea. So does anybody else have any other ideas for using this in the classroom, even with other kind of primary sources, secondary sources?
Kyle, I was going to say that because I do more professional development than teaching students directly, the album that I created was very much pointed toward professional development and to helping other teachers. But how would you advise handling creating an album in the network that you'd want to share on the outside with students directly? Would you, for example, use the teaching notes to give instructions? Would you use the teaching notes to simply write questions for students to answer? And so on. What are some of your thoughts on that? And people are welcome to put that into the chat too, some ideas for how you would handle creating an album in the network, not for other teachers, but for students directly.
Yeah, sure. And I'll go ahead and make Michelle Pearson and Laura Israelson co-hosts, just in case if they want to chime in. You don't have to, but my first inclination would I love the idea of just putting your questions or even like the activity in the album description. And then you can really zoom in on each of the questions with the single sources, just like you did. And if those questions can be any type of questions that you want to use.
And we have a question from Sherry Levitt, who asks, how do you layer in music?
Yeah, so the music on the video with Adobe Spark, it's all right there under the controls that it just allows you. They have a number of audio like clips that you can use that are in the Creative Commons. I think if you have the Pro account, you can put in your own audio, but you don't have to. With the audio, there's like, if you want to record your voice, there's just a little button that says record, and all you have to do is just talk into it.
Yeah, this is Keith. We used it to do some PD clips, just recording some quick little teaching ideas with people, and it was like incredibly simple. The transitions are all handled. Basically, you just line up the whatever clip you have, and then just put your voice clip over, and it does all the timeline things. It'll like figure out when you start and end things and when to make the transition. So it's a lot of those things. Being my background, my degree is actually in technical communications and media production. All those really heavy technical things that you can still do if you have more fancy software, you can, but it strips all that stuff out and makes it really approachable for even your youngest students and people who consider themselves not to be very tech savvy. So it really kind of lowers that bar and evens that playing field for just about everybody. As long as your computer's cooperating, right, Kyle?
Yeah, exactly.
The trials of working from home.
So this is Michelle. I'm going to pop in with another one. Mary, your GlideShow, when you're using the albums, I know from using the network, and referring, there's a lot of questions within the network that talk about differing perspectives. A lot of times when people are developing things, they're wanting the different lenses that people have on an event or something that's going on. We've used resources within the album to do a split screen Adobe Spark. So if you're creating a GlideShow, you can do a split screen, and we put dual perspectives along with some key questions. There you go, Kyle's doing that. Along with some key inquiry questions that allow students really to dig in and look at different lenses. We've done it with civil rights, with the Civil War, looking at the British and American perspectives. And with the GlideShow, you can actually set it up so that the kids can process through it in the classroom on their devices and work in groups or independently. In the remote learning situation now, it's really nice because the presentation flows very nicely for kiddos. And if you've got some contextual background or just basis of information, they can actually go through the process and look at some different lenses. And I know the network offers a lot of resources in that regard, because it's like one large brain trust across the United States. So when you're looking for another perspective, it's somewhere in that network. You just have to dig a little.
That's for sure. Michelle, I was wondering if you were to take one of these, because many of the teaching ideas I had when I created this album were comparing to current events, obviously, about social distancing. Would you ever, because I know you have your students work in Adobe Spark, you could put that side-by-side view. Yes. And have one of the images from this album, and then have students upload an image to compare from today?
You can. It's a little harder without the premium account to use a shared show in development.
Okay.
But in the modality that you're speaking of, Mary, it would be really nice to take those images that you've created within that album, place them in a folder, much like what Kyle has done, and then have the students with a good storyboard actually pull images in and then create it yourself. Okay. So it's doing exactly what you're speaking of, but the creation piece really pushes down to that skill set of the student. You're providing those resources out of the album, and then they augment those resources with the other things that they're finding, or maybe it's another album. You know, it would be really interesting to take two folders with the album information, much of what you've created here, and have the kids really compare the sources within the albums and build the spark to show the connections that they're drawing from the albums. You in your mind have done certain connections in regards to research. Like I was really interested to hear you speaking about standing in line and looking your thought process of what you were looking for. Students seeing just the raw primary sources may make connections that are a little bit different. So it'd be really interesting to pull those albums out of the teacher network, put them side by side, and allow student to draw those connections, and then do what we call that claim, evidence, and reasoning, right? Making a claim, providing those evidence and reasoning pieces. And that's really taking the power of the TPS network resources and placing it in the hands of students so that they can do that inquiry and that critical thinking around them. That's, right. I think, how I approach it.
Okay, good advice. That's fabulous.
And I wanted to just show too that there is, like Michelle was saying, that on the TPS Teachers Network, if you go to the albums and then all albums, there's tons and tons and tons of ideas if you don't know what to search for to begin with. And there's so many albums.
And I would also let you all know that there are a handful, probably half a dozen albums at this point, of either about the coronavirus or about the influenza of 1918. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you're wanting to do a lesson, for example, on the Spanish influenza of 1918, it's already in the network in many, many different places. Kyle, I think you could do a search on outbreak, for example.
Outbreak? Okay.
Yeah, outbreak. I just happen to remember the title of this album. This is an entire worldwide health crisis lesson idea done by one of our TPS Teachers Network mentors. It's an entire lesson plan. And what she's done is put the lesson plan ideas in the description of the album with all sorts of tasks for students to tackle, real world applications. And then she's made a collection in the album of articles and images and so on from the Spanish influenza period. Very complete. And I have to tell you that I found the quarantine is lifted from the same source that she went to. So, you know, you can beg, borrow, and steal from other, not just albums, but also discussions in the network.
Teachers and poets alike are the best at beg, borrowing, and stealing.
One more thing I wanted to mention, that when you're working with an album in the network, you can always edit your album. So if you don't have all your teaching ideas figured out and you still want to think about them a little, or you come up with an idea later, you can always go into your albums and edit those teaching notes item per item. And you saw Kyle click on the editing button, which is always the white gear icon over, or white gear over a red background. So you can go back in, go into an individual item and edit and add more ideas.
And I just want to have everybody keep in mind that when you're creating your albums, or if you find an album, they're collaborative or can be collaborative. So even though Spark is not necessarily collaborative unless you have the premium account, this is another way that you might be able to collaborate with your peers to collect sets around different things. I know, Mary, you started an album recently with people just reflecting on their current situation with the pandemic. That's been kind of fun to see people's different situations. Is fun the right word? I don't know.
Fun? I don't know.
Interesting.
We live in interesting times.
Interesting.
I wanted to show off, we were talking about comparing and contrasting the COVID times, and I wanted to show this insider post from the network that our regional director, Peggy O'Neill-Jones, created. And these are images from when she was in Israel, and I don't want to talk too much for it because you can read it, but just the showing of this, it used to have thousands of people all over, and now it's got nothing. And I just loved showing the contrast of that.
Matter of fact, she's doing a session about this in the upcoming weeks. I don't know exactly when, right?
Right, yeah, she will be on in, I'm not sure exactly what day, but later in May.
Forgive us because we're doing a few of these, so we have to always check. And Nikki asked, do you ever all do whole school or virtual PD sessions like for a teacher's back to school or retreat? Yes, Nikki, I'm not sure where you're from. The TPS program is a national program, and so we have partners all over the place. So we do things all over the place. If you're not aware, the TPS program actually does also have the ability to do grants up to $20,000 out to different places for different projects. So it looks like you are in Colorado. So yeah, be in touch with us. Our contact information should be all over the place, or it's on the last slide. Shoot us an email and we can talk about what we might be able to help you with. There's lots of opportunities. We're here to help teachers. So, and if you're from other parts of the country, contact us as well. We can help you, or we can connect you with someone more local who might have great resources or different resources as well. So I always like to say the TPS program is a great connector. The TPS Teachers Network is just one of the great ways that we communicate with each other and stay in touch and share. Yeah, so that's a good transition to the kind of the end. If there's other questions, go ahead and keep posting those. But for now, since we are at the top of the hour, we'll just kind of honor this 1 hour thing and just kind of wrap this up. So I'd like to again say thanks to Mary and Kyle, who have helped run the presentation part of this. Also to Crystal, who's been helping out in the chat room, as well as Michelle and Laura and everybody else who's contributed some to the conversation tonight. And above all, I'd like to thank the Library of Congress for making this webinar possible through the TPS program. Just a couple of reminders. Again, if you are interested in getting a professional development certificate for your participation today, the link is up there. It's that bit.ly/PS Teaching Online, all lowercase. Click on that. It'll take you out to a quick reflection that you can fill out, and also just let us know where we can send that certificate, and we will get that to you as soon as possible. And as we've mentioned, a recording of tonight's presentation along with the resources will be shared up on the TPS Teachers Network probably tomorrow unless something happens. And again, in that same area, all the webinars that we've had over the past several weeks will be up there as well. So those are a great resource for you to do some more exploration into teaching with primary sources. I think Kyle will also be posting up some other links for some other resources, so you can just copy and paste those before we close out tonight. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. And if you have any questions, just hang on. So thanks and have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.